Morning, everyone. So let's do a quick video about chaff and warriors.god. So this is a very important topic, and it always plagues me when I think about, what do I want to use as my chaff pieces? First, you can go on the argument of, do you need one or two chaff pieces? I used to run one a while back, just dogs. That was with the portals, and maybe due to that, I didn't need two. I think nowadays, since I run much more aggro list, my thought process is I need two chaff pieces just for optimal chaffing and going aggressive and having a backup chaff. So I think you can go off either assumption. You can either do one or two. Obviously, you need probably at least the one. And in it'll be the context of your list. Given how I play, we're going to go on the assumption that you need two. And so I think warriors are afforded basically four chaff pieces, and I'm even going to say three. Obviously, missing from in front of me is Fallen. They're kind of too slow, in my opinion, to be considered raw chaff. I have used them in my masters list. I had like 5 or something, and I portaled them around. Move 12 light troops just isn't really fast enough, especially when your army is backed up by like elders and heralds. Like move 12 is not fast enough for that army. That being said, if you have a portal and stuff, they do make decent chaff because they can go through it and not get hurt, which is nice. But they're going to be left out of this particular discussion. You've never heard me talk about chimeras really by themselves, and it wasn't until today that I really am talking about them at all. The thing about a chimera is, and I haven't tried them, they're so curious to me because, when you think about them, 200 points. We'll talk about the points in a second. But if we just compare them to other chaff, right? 820, so they're very fast. They're just as fast as flayers are. They're single models, so they're more maneuverable than the dogs are. Same as flayers. Have about the same footprint given it's a 50 by 100. Same, a little bit smaller than flayers, but can't be spread out like flayers can. Resilience-wise, Res 5, 4+, 4 wounds. Way more resilient than the other chaff pieces. Doesn't die to a fireball. Doesn't even die to light shooting. Honestly, like strength 3 shooting that can kill flayers and maybe a round or two, it takes a lot of shots to kill a chimera. Like the Res 5 is actually really nice for a chaff piece. And obviously the biggest thing about it is it has 5 strength 5. Like it's a single model, 5 strength 5, super fast, March 20. The thing about this, why I don't always love to put it in chaff, is it's not really fair because it's also 55 points more than flayers. Right? For the same price as this, you can get 5 flayers or even maybe 6 flayers with lash and shields. And all of a sudden, you have more HP, you have the same save, Res 5 versus Res 3, of course, but now you can lash things, and the flayers still have Strength 4 attacks plus mounts. I think it starts to get a little unfair comparison. And then if you really want to go a little bit further, for 60 more points in that Chimera, you can get a Giant. And a Giant, even without anything, is basically the same offensive. 5 strength 5, AP 2. It's AG1 versus AG3 and offense 4 versus 3. It gets more. That's not a helm. That's a helm, not a Giant. Same thing. Oh, yeah, there we go. It's AG3. My bad. It has, less armor, 3 more wounds, it gets more attacks, blah, blah, blah. It stomps, it doesn't, it's a totally different unit at that point. It's not as fast, it's 714, it doesn't swift stride, blah, blah, blah. So I don't know, I feel like it gets into this unfair territory where do you use a Chimera? Is it really good? I don't know, maybe this comes down to the meta choice. It's just not something right now. Because as pure chaff, I can't imagine this being better than flayers. Because flayers can actually benefit from terrain. They don't take DTs from anything. They're Strider. They have 6-inch Vanguard, which can be really big for getting in front of people that can go 1 wide. Of course, on the other side, the Chimera can force clips. It doesn't auto-die to a lot of units. Like, it's not easy to do 4 wounds to it, so there's a good chance it may break, but not actually die, which can actually be very annoying for you sometimes, but more so it's annoying for the opponent because if you charge this with like a strength 3 unit, you're probably not doing any wounds. Maybe one if you're lucky. Hell, it might just hold you, to be honest. On another point, it's leadership 8. Doesn't get rerolls for anything. So one big common problem or potential problem, and one reason I've almost lost games is because you fail terror check on your dogs. And if you only have dogs and you don't have a Herald and you only have a Chaos Lord, it's leadership 9, one time, no rerolls. So the one greatest thing about flares is they have rerolls. So that leadership check when you need the terror check and you're blocking some large monster, you need a rerollable 8/9, maybe even minimized if you have the Herald. So it makes those checks way less scary. And the Chimera and the dogs do not do that. And that's actually probably one of the biggest points that is maybe unrealized on paper when you compare flares to dogs, is that you just don't get the rerolls. I mean, let's be fair. So let's take Chimeras out of this, because I don't think they fit in with the pure chaff. They're an interesting piece for 200. Maybe one day I'll try them. They're super fast. They can hunt war machines well. They can kill little units. They can combo charge with elders. And then, the one nice part about it is, one, they don't just insta die. It's not like if you charge 8 dogs into something and then you flank it with a Herald or clip it with a Herald, like the dogs are going to die. At least the Chimera has a chance to survive it. And then it's even worse to the opponent if it's on 1 wound left. It takes up 4 models. They only get 1 wound for killing it, and all of a sudden maybe they can't even redirect or can't even reform and get more models on your Herald. They don't take up a lot of room. I can think of a lot of reasons to take Chimeras, and I think a lot of the anti-reasons will be, for a little bit more points you get a giant, or for a little bit more, or if you take 2 Chimeras, it's 400. That could be a knight unit. That could be a chosen unit. Or that could be almost a character, blah, blah, blah. I mean, that's an argument for 2 giants sometimes. You're like, 2 giants is 580 points with club. Pretty cool. And then you're like, a souped out Chaos Lord is only 600 points, like the Chariot guy and Tropic guy. And he probably just does more cool things. Even though he's one piece versus 2 single models, he's 1 single model. Sometimes just having a much stronger single model is just better than having a bunch of weak ones. So, there's a lot of times when playing Warriors that you can kind of do that math and be like, this kind of translates to X, and it just doesn't feel as good because it's not as singularly powerful. Anyway, that's kind of what happens when I make funny lists, and then I'm like, meh. Anyway, we're talking about chaff here, so let's just focus on the 3 I have at hand: flares, dogs, and dogs. 5 dogs are 95 points, they count as special. 8 dogs are 119 points, they count as core. 5 flares without any upgrades are 145 points, they count as special. So normally the big thing here is you think about it as using core points as like a core tax, and you think of using special as like, that could be something else. I'm not sure, and I'm not 100% if that's a fair assessment all the time, and especially for Warriors, because you are under the assumption, or it is part of the assumption, that core sucks, and so getting the most out of core is the best you can do. So let's just take a very simple example, at least in my head. And this is part of the weird thought processes we go through when we're building lists and thinking about things. And I do want to be clear that I spent a lot of time in my videos talking about lists, when in actuality, and part of the thing I said, you really just should play the game and see how things work for you, right? You can analyze whether it's good or bad and stuff, but unless you're good enough at the game and good enough with your army, it doesn't really matter about, you need to be good at the game to build lists that are pretty good and do these nuanced decisions, right? It's not as clear cut, and sometimes you just gotta try it and see if you like it and see if it works. Like I've tried the double dogs with double warrior core, and I just didn't love it myself. So anyway, a very obvious core setup is this, right? Just triple lust, perfect 900 points. Another core that is actually, I'll make it because I can. So another core setup that is perfect points is this. and I think you can either go 2 times 11 and 2 times 8 dogs. Sorry. So, right. I normally don't visualize things for you guys, but maybe it's nice to see visually what you're getting for the points. So you get this. That's a perfect 900. So both these are 900 points. And so and you can get core setups for like 903 and stuff or 920. And it's fine to be thin core or a little overcore. I think that's another thing that people, even myself, is like, oh, I want to be close to 0 as possible, 900. But I mean, core isn't garbage. It's not like the worst things in the book. I mean, you could be like, if you were talking about some of the most broken things in the Warriors book, right? Just some of the things that you think are absolutely the strongest pieces. Like, I know I was talking to Thomas about this, maybe top 5. I don't remember what our top 5 was, but you might say an Elder is a very, very strong monster. A Herald, we like Heralds. So, I mean, I've told you before, I'm probably never going to run an army without a Herald for a while, unless it's just to try shit. A Helmall is super powerful, but a Helmall changes how you play, and so I think it's how we always think about it is that, and I haven't confirmed this yet. That's why I want to test Helmall more. Is the way you play the Helmall is probably a boring way of Warhammer for me. And while strong, and while people, I don't know why so many people have gone so far away from it, while it is maybe one of the strongest pieces, just because it's strong doesn't mean it works in your army. And so we're still figuring that out. And I don't even know what else we would consider some of the strongest OP things in the book. Maybe Veilwalker, or I don't know. But, oh no, Lust Warriors. So, like, 10 Lust Warriors are probably one of the best things in the book for 300 points, right? And they're core. And you could say that, so 5 Lust Chosen with full command or banner musician is also like 295. So it's 295 points for 5 Lust Chosen, which has the same amount of wounds. Let's just assume these are chosen, right? I think it was full command. I don't remember. Right? So these 2 units are the same amount of points. Now technically you can go a smaller frontage with the chosen. You could be, 5-man units. And so if these 2 are the same, what do you really, if they're the same amount of wounds total, you have more attacks per model. In fact, full frontage wise, this is 16 attacks and this is 16 attacks because they get full supporting attacks. I mean, honestly, these guys are just better, right? They're +1 move. They have better stats. They're offense 6, agility, like they're all +1 better stats. And so the real reason you probably don't see, the Lust Warriors, the Lust Chosen versus the Lust Warriors is one is special and one's core. Let's just be fair. That's probably why. And then when you start getting into if you're already going to fill your core with, like, it becomes like an option bias there, where it's like, well, if I drop this chosen unit for 300, that almost becomes, start to get a monster, start to get fast things. There's really not that same option in core. Like, you're not going to get anything super special for the difference unless you get a bigger unit or something. So let's just go off the assumption that 10 Lust Warriors is extremely powerful. They can strider, they can flee, they feign flight, they have solid stats. They're better with buffs than people realize. You can make them 1-up saves, you can make them like knights, you can make them reroll a wound, and having 16 AP 2 Flaming Glory of Gold is super strong. I would say the biggest downfall of Lust Warriors is people just play them like badly. And I'm trying to get better with them. I mean, they can just walk up and like be annoying. Like, you don't have to hide them. You don't have to just keep them on the flank. They're great at fighting off scenarios. I mean, they're just a unit that's just obnoxious. And the fact that they can flee is probably the biggest thing in Warriors, because one, you can still flank and stuff with them, but you can just, if you can't flee with things, you're just at a point where maybe you just get in a shitty position and you you can't do anything about it. And one thing that's cool that people don't realize is they can flee through impassable terrain and they don't take DTs because they're Strider. It's actually pretty cool for a lot of Lust things, like Lust Chimeras or Lust Dragons. You can actually flee through terrain and just not give a shit. You only take DTs if you flee through enemy units. So there's times where you can just flee and get to safety behind a terrain piece. I think people don't push with them enough and just flee, because fleeing wastes the enemy's time if they try. So sometimes it's just like, I don't want to get into the tactical thing, but sometimes people keep it, let's just say this is a lance or something, they keep it out of 18 inches because they're scared of getting charged and stuff, or 20 inch, whatever the lance charges. But honestly, like, if you put it here, like, if the lance charges you and you flee, like, you've just stopped their movement for a turn. So there's something that, like, you're trading movement for movement. And I don't think it's as bad as people think. Like, people stay at a 20, but if you put yourself within, like, 16 and you think you can flee out of range, then they have an option. They can either charge you and just waste their movement because you're going to flee. It depends on the situation, of course. Or they're not going to charge you, and you've just gained 4 more inches of space because they can't afford to charge you because you're going to flee anyway. I digress on that because it's not the point of this conversation. But so the fact is, you can say that Lust Warriors are just pretty fucking good, right? And so now we have 2 900-point cores. And the biggest difference is, if you make the assumption that you have to buy chaff outside a core, if you don't do it here, let's say you take the German way and you do this combo, which is 95 plus 145, which is 240. So these two are 2 points difference, right? Because this is 119, this is 95, 145, so 240. Yeah. So you're talking about 2 points difference between this side and this side. Not a big difference. What do you get? Well, all of a sudden you're sitting in this, 2 points between the chaff. So you're sitting at 300 extra points. So right now, this side, not even 300, 240 extra points. So you can get, I want to really, really show this. So 240 extra, right? So you're sitting at 240 extra points on the right side. And let's just see what you've lost for it. You both have 2 chaff. Fair that 1 chaff is 5 dogs versus 1 chaff is 8 dogs. So you can say the 8 dogs are better when in actuality they're not that much better. Yes, the 8 dogs are less likely to die in 1 round of volley, but to be fair, you're probably going to chaff early on, and people probably aren't shooting your, they're probably more likely to die to a panic check or something. So the 5 dogs are usually the first thing that dies anyway. And then you're getting a more stable chaff piece in flares. So for the chaff-wise, the left is better. For sure, the left is better. Flares, they can go in a big line. You can do a lot more things. I think one thing that I forget is that flares give you a lot of options in the chaff world versus dogs. Not only do they have faint flight, do they get reroll versus panics, just better leadership in general, so they don't actually need the general around to pass panic checks. I mean, they reroll panic and terrors. They reroll in combat. They're strength 4, so they can actually do a couple wounds. I mean, I can go on, but they're just clearly a better chaff piece. The only difference is, for 145 to 119, they're clearly the better chaff piece. They have a 5-up save, so they have more probably effective wounds versus most things. They can do this, which is not only, yes, dogs can run up, go 22, and wheel, but they can do this, which is not only good, but you can do weird things like forcing people. You can drag them down. If you chaff them like this, they can get dragged down. They're more likely to be able to go on the flank and charge things. Like, I don't know. There's no argument to ever be made that 8 dogs is better than 5 flares. The only argument, in my opinion, to be made is the core points. And the fact that in this particular way, you get 240 extra points to play with. But it's not just that. It's not 2 chaff plus 240, because you're also losing a scoring piece. So you really have to think of it like, what are you getting for 240? And is it better than this piece? So if you say, first off, getting one extra warrior, 2 extra warriors, and a banner is, in my opinion, is nothing special. Like the 10 warriors do what 11 do, pretty much the same, and the banner is nice to have, but is not. You're doing it just to get min core. Sure, if you have a character on a war dais or you have a battle shrine, putting both warriors into one unit and going with the banner, sure, having 12-man lust with a banner in a war dais and a battle shrine is pretty good. I'll give you that there's some use there, but I don't significantly see the difference between these two units. One warrior is not changing the world. So I think in some ways you're almost wasting points in that sense. Like you're forcing yourself to get to min 4 with what I would consider not optimal points. In fact, it might even be better, just looking at it from abroad. Now you're not going to get min core doing this. There are 26 points per model. I had to do math in my head. This is 2/3. I could just open up to recruit. I think how many points is this? So you're going for that many? You're okay. It sucks because you're 2 points short. Because I was saying it would probably be better to go banner, relentless banner. Like relentless banner might just be better than if you had the points. This is not going to work, is it? This is just a random list I was making. You're going to be 1 point short, 2 points short. This is probably, I mean, you could just go. I mean, it feels like it's just being bad at this point, but like you could do something like this, and it's probably slightly better than that setup I had outside of it. So if you had 8 points, this might be better. You lose 2 actual warrior models, but you gain a banner in each. This doesn't matter. It's more about relentless on a warrior unit is actually pretty good to like get it up in the fight. It can be pseudo chaff. I guess that's another thing too. You consider these units chaff, or they can flee and stuff like that. Anyway, back to the core argument of one significantly better chaff. So let's just start with there. I do like a dog unit because it's nice to kind of sacrifice it for occultism early on. They're kind of free bodies that are cheap and going to die anyway. But I digress there. It's this unit, right? So it's what do you get here for 240 compared to a unit of Lust Warriors, and then whatever intrinsic value you put on the difference in chaff, right? Because my intrinsic value or something is saying that this is equal to this is equal. This is very worth 0. So there's some value in this, right? And then there's value in this right here. So what do we get? One, you have to fill core. So you get the freedom that 240 points has some value outside of core, right? And so for 240, like I guess the closest thing I can think of obvious is a giant, a naked giant. And that's 20 points more, but let's just go with it. Let's just go with this idea. And you can make units bigger, It's 100 points away from being a unit of knights, like 5 knights. So let's just use 5 knights as an example. All right? I think it's one of the closest things you can get, like 5 knights. Okay. So now you're saying, now this is plus 100 on the left side. So I know now we're going back and forth, and we're just this is the problem with warriors. There's not like an equal. There's not something you can be like, oh, it's so much like that 240 points. Like I said, it can go into things. It can make things better. It can be the tipping point you need. So there are some lists that just have 0 points to spare and needs the 240 outside of, it has to go min core because it goes like max heroes, max monsters. It just does everything outside of core. So usually it's not a straight swap. Usually it's not like I'm buying knights. And if you really wanted to go a little bit deeper in let's make this a little more fair. Where is it? Where's flares? Let's just say you bought 2 flare units. Because the flares are 50 points more, 50 points more than dogs. So this becomes 290. So this is probably an even trade here. So from a standpoint of core and special points, these are very close to equal, I would say. Almost exactly the same points. Right? So now, when you think of it this way, you're like, okay, I have upgraded a scoring unit to a fast knight unit. Because this knight unit's 300 something, right? Yeah, right here. So 345. So we're still short. This is still more points by a little bit. These guys could have shields at this point. But let's just say this is equal. What do you get? You have 2 chaff. Okay, chaff is equal in number of chaff. You have 3 scoring. Okay, scoring is equal in number of scoring. Quality of scoring. You have 2 units that are basically the same as the units on the left, and then you have a knight unit compared to a war unit. We already said we thought less warriors were OP, or really good, one of the best things in the book. Knights, sure, a little faster, more susceptible. They only have 6 wounds compared to 11 wounds. They take DTs, they can't flee. They have uses, for sure. Not going to discredit knights and their uses. But is that knight unit that much better than the warrior unit you get in core, compared to how much better these 2 units of flares are than the 2 units of dogs? Does that kind of make sense how you think about it? We think of it a lot as far as, I want min core, and look, I'm getting min core, I'm getting my chaff and core. I'm getting my chaff and my core, and I'm minned out. But you are losing a scoring unit. A very solid scoring unit that we think is one of the best units in the book. So if that's the case, then you need to get something for the points that you're spending on the flares that's better. A lot of the time, in the Wilhelm list or something, you're getting a big chosen knight unit and then a character. Now in that list, I will say you're going with 3 scoring. Now of course you're going to have 2 good scoring, and you're going to have 2 solid scoring, then 1 beefy scoring. In this particular way, it really depends on what you're getting for the rest of your points, because you could still buy a big unit of something. There's still points to be had. Maybe, depending on, are you going with a Feldrake unit, a knight unit, blah, blah, blah. Are you getting a 4 scoring anywhere, or are you just rolling with 3 scoring? Or, I do think this isn't a simple calculation, but I just wanted to point out there that, which would you rather have? I don't know, part of me wants this one. Now, of course, this knight unit can change into anything. It can evolve and be bigger with the special points. It's not completely fair. But just from a on-the-table perspective, you sacrifice a little bit. I don't even know. If you put these next to each other and don't say one's core, which one's better? It's hard to say the knights are better, right? It is. They're faster, they hit hard, they lock it. Listen, I like the knights, don't get me wrong. And their pride in this particular example, though they shouldn't be because of the points. They should probably have no command almost. And they're fast, which is nice. So don't get me wrong, I like the knights. But there's something to be said about the left side. There's something to be said that it's just better chaff. The chaff is more important to be better. Because you can do weird things like you can hold it back, you can hide in runes, you can flank things, you can hunt war machines, you can, these units are very unwieldy. That's why having 2 feels super bad. You need to keep it near your general. You got to watch, they take up a lot of space. They can't get around units, so you got to make sure you can chaff. Sure, you get the 22-inch march one time, but there's a big difference when you can go this way, and otherwise this has to chaff straight forward. If you don't put them in a good position, you're never going to be able to chaff them, right? Like if you start them here in marching columns and the enemy puts this whole army here, you're never going to chaff them. But if you put 5 players here in marching columns, you could vanguard 6, and then you can move 20 turn 1, and all of a sudden you're in position to chaff turn 2 or 3. That's a huge difference. I think when it comes to just straight going back and forth on deployments, the flares also win because in counter thrust they're really good because you can do that straight line of them and they don't really sacrifice their position. You can if you have to go back and forth on deployment, they're much more versatile and to get away from units or reposition. They still go 26 inches turn 1 if you needed to. I mean, the dogs go 22, but these guys go 26, so they're actually faster on the turn 1 chaff. They don't reroll terror. I mean, I can go on. I mean, there's nothing you can't compare, right? Like you're paying more points for these guys. This is 280. This is 238. So you're paying the 40 points, but I can't imagine that's even close to who's better in chat. The only advantage the dogs have is they come from core. But I think you really have to think of the full argument where you're losing a Lust Warrior unit from this core choice, and what are you gaining from it? And is it actually better than the increase in good chaff ability? And I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Personally, I think it depends on the list. Like it's hard if you're looking at Wilhelm's list. It's super hard to fit in like the flares. Like you just can't because it's 2 elders, a chosen lord, and a big war chosen block. So if you're trying to fit in, you got to really degrade the chosen block to get it. Degrade the chosen knights. And it just doesn't feel like it's worth it. I don't know. But I think that I too many times say, I can just get my chaff in core, and 1, forget that flares are absolutely way better than dogs, and 2, that the warrior unit that you replace the dogs with, 1, you're kind of wasting points and making these units bigger, but 2, like the warrior units are just good. Like they're just good, and that's kind of my argument to be had. So again, just something to think about. I don't have a conclusion from it. I think both work. I think you can have lists where you have the dogs, the barb horsemen, 1 flare unit, and 2 lust units where you still get 3 scoring. Because there's only 2 scoring out of core. You can do the one where you have this, and then you have like 8 barb horsemen, and it's like this. This with 8 barb horsemen is a couple over core. If you put in like command on the barbs, it's like 20 over core, but that gives you 3 scoring and a chaff piece. And I do like 1 dog unit. I think 2 dog units is a bit unwieldy and hard to get the second chaff when you need it. It can work, obviously, but it does feel a little bad. I mean, that goes to say, do you actually need 2 chaff units? I don't know. Oh, that was a lot of talking. This was not a short video. Thanks for listening.